Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Hey, and welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, where the business of law meets the practice of law. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and each week we sit down with successful attorneys, legal innovators, and business leaders to explore what it really takes to build a thriving law firm. We go beyond the courtroom to discuss leadership, profitability, operations, technology, AI, and the strategies that help law firms grow, scale, and create lasting value. Whether you're a managing partner, an emerging firm leader, or someone passionate about the future of the legal profession, our goal is to provide practical insights that you can put to work immediately. Today, we are pleased to welcome Aaron Feuer, founder of the Aaron Feuer Law Firm in Miami, Florida. Aaron is a board-certified civil trial attorney by the Florida Bar, which is an honor earned by fewer than 1% of Florida attorneys. Before opening his firm, he served nearly 5 years as the assistant state attorney prosecuting homicide and gang violence cases before transitioning to the personal injury litigation practice. Today, his practice focuses on representing seriously injured clients throughout South Florida. And over his career, Aaron has tried more than 60 jury trials, handled nearly 1,000 client matters, and studied trial advocacy at the Keble College at Oxford University, and built a reputation as a true courtroom lawyer. His background spans criminal prosecution, civil litigation, and now entrepreneurship as a law firm owner. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. That was quite the intro. It was fun to listen to. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Well, thanks for being here. Hey, I like to start with folks' origin stories and tell me what took you to law school and then your path to where you are today at your firm.
Sure. So I always knew growing up that I wanted to be an attorney. I grew up with parents who always pushed me and drove me and set me up for success. And, from a young age, they kind of instill in you, hey, be a doctor, be a lawyer, you're going to be successful if you're one of those things. I had no interest in medicine whatsoever. So I always felt my path was as an attorney, and I always sort of had that in my head. And to put it very, very basically, growing up, I thought attorneys were cool. And so I always had and held attorneys in a very high regard, and going through high school, going through college, I always knew that was my path.
Was there a TV attorney, or was it someone in your personal life that gave you this coolness for the attorneys?
Yeah, so no attorneys in my family, really. I would say, the coolest attorney out there is Harvey Specter from Suits, no doubt. Not a super realistic show, but he's definitely one of the cool ones.
And you had the unique opportunity to go to Dartmouth and play football.
Yes.
Then you went to the University of Florida and earned a finance degree. So I got to tell you, the finance piece of this is refreshing to me because most attorneys are English majors or some other humanity. But this gives you a unique perspective in being an entrepreneur and owner, this finance background. Tell me about how that helps you in running your firm.
Yeah, I think it helps significantly, and it really helps with crunching numbers when discussing settlements and possibilities with clients, because you have to factor in attorney's fees, costs, medical bills, what they want, and you have to work backwards and forwards with the numbers. And so when speaking with clients and the other side about that kind of stuff, I always can calculate, within seconds and be able to provide numbers and figures, whether it to be my client or, a defense attorney or a judge or anything like that. I'm very quick with it, and I'm very comfortable with talking numbers. It obviously also helps with profit and loss, anything to do with running the business. I actually do my own books, my own QuickBooks, my own finances, things like that. So that's a huge help because I understand that side so well, whereas some attorneys, they hate numbers, they hate math. They use their calculator to add 10 and 15. I just recently learned that actually a big indicator of how good you are with numbers and with math is the history section of your calculator on your own phone. So if anyone out there is ever curious to see how they measure up in their math, go ahead, take a look at their history on their calculator and compare it to somebody else's.
So how do you get to the history on your calculator on your iPhone?
I can't do it just off the top of my head, but I know once you go in the app on one of the little settings, it allows you to look at your history. I was recently challenged about this. That's why I know this. A friend had made a comment, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm good with numbers." And he's like, "Let me see your calculator." And I hand it over, and he goes, "Okay, you're good."
I'm going to have to check that out when we're done here.
Yeah.
So tell me what was the circumstance surrounding you starting out as a prosecutor in South Florida? And then how did that lead you to the plaintiff side?
So I always knew I wanted, well, at least once I got to law school, I definitely knew I wanted to do trial work. And it actually came from sort of a failure of mine. I tried out for the mock trial team my first year and I made it to the finals, but ultimately I actually didn't make it. I had one very poor round in the early rounds. But in the closing round, in the 35 finalists, I had the second best closing. And it gave me such a rush and excitement, similar to playing sports, like the sort of nervousness, but confidence right before you go on. And then you take the stage, and it's sort of like being an actor, and you're the person on stage delivering an opening, a closing, a cross examination, whatever it may be. And I loved the thrill of it. It was the closest thing to competition and to sports that I could get outside of actual sports. And I knew that to become a great litigator and a great trial attorney, you have to have the experience. And the one place you can go and really get that groundwork and then experience is if you're an assistant state attorney, a prosecutor, or a public defender, because you try a lot of cases. So I actually started my career in Jacksonville, Florida. The reason I was even in Jacksonville is because I wanted to, at the time, I sort of wanted to prove to myself that I could start anywhere, not have connections, not know anybody, get the job all by myself through my qualifications, through interviews, that kind of thing, and see what I could build by myself, even though I always knew I was coming back to South Florida at some point. Now, looking back on that and knowing how important it is to grow your network and those relationships and things like that, there's part of me that thinks that, hey, maybe I should have come down here first because I always knew I was going to be down here to grow my network and grow those relationships. But I got opportunities in the state attorney's office in Jacksonville that I would have never gotten down here. For example, I was moved into homicide right after about 3 years. There's prosecutors here in Miami and Broward and Palm Beach County who don't even get to felony court in 3 years, or they get to felony court and they're trying the most basic felonies of third degree felonies of grand theft, possession of a controlled substance, something like that. So I was able to get experience that I would have never gotten if I was a prosecutor down here, and I think that was invaluable. So my extensive trial work at the state attorney's office really laid the groundwork for coming into the civil world.
That's a great point, and I hadn't considered it. That trial work is all about storytelling and being effective, communicating and responding and reacting to things. And being a prosecutor allowed you those reps to do that. It sounded like you had some natural ability and a competitive thought process, but getting all those reps helps you be a better trial attorney today. So when you think about going to trial, or you think about all the cases that you have in your inventory of client matters, I guess you always have to have the mindset that I'm willing to go to trial. But what sets your firm apart from others that maybe are pushing to settle and not go to trial?
So building up your case, whether you're going to go to trial or not, building it towards trial makes your case the strongest. And so what I tell my clients from the very start, from when we talk in the beginning, I say, hey, look, when I tell you things, I'm always going to be telling you things and thinking like we're going to be speaking to a jury in the end. So every single case, no matter if I think it's going to go to trial or not, I act like it is from day one. I start preparing like that case is going to go to trial, whether it's a very minor injury or a very significant injury. And so I think with that focus of, hey, you're in my head, this case is going into litigation, this case is going towards trial, it helps me build it up to a point that it's in that range of, hey, this is where I would recommend you to settle, because at some point there is a very big risk reward analysis that goes into it. And what I tell my clients too is going to trial is similar to gambling, because you're gambling with the jury that you are going to get, because it's 6 strangers who have a valid driver's license and live in the county and weren't convicted felons. And that's essentially it. And you could have 6 jury members who love plaintiffs or hate them, who hate lawsuits, who hate the attorneys who bring it, and you never know. And you could have the greatest evidence and the greatest facts, but if you don't have a very good jury, you're in trouble. And it can work the opposite way too. I can have a very difficult case with difficult facts, and I may have an excellent jury. But what I also always tell my clients, and is the absolute truth, I would not recommend them to take something or to resolve a case for something that I wouldn't recommend to my own mother or my own family member. And that's how I handle every case. And I think that separates me, because I'm not a super high volume firm where they're like, oh, we're just going to move these out. These are little ones. No. Every single case is important to me. Every single client is important to me. And I want to maximize the value of those cases. And I treat my clients like I'm handling the case of one of my own family members.
Now, I think I heard you say earlier that you run your own books. Maybe you do your own taxes as well. And I know you have the background for that, but I want to give you a little story about my doctor. My doctor is the kind of guy that you can call on the weekend and, he'll call a prescription in, or he'll do whatever. I'll call him and I'll say, hey, I'm having this issue. He'll say, come in tomorrow at 7:30, ahead of his schedule. And he went to a hospitalist model. So if you're in the hospital, he doesn't make rounds anymore. And I called him and I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I know I have to pay the hospitalist to do this, but I can see 20% more patients and spend more time with those patients. So I would encourage you to offload the finance piece. You have the background to understand the data, but offload that information and that work to someone else. Maybe hire someone and allow you to spend more time with it. So I'm off my soapbox now. But we spend a lot of time with firms talking about KPIs and running that. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I misunderstood you that you were cutting your own hair too. But because you have this finance background and you're so in tune with the numbers, I want to understand what kind of KPIs do you look at? Do you look at matter length and time to close or time to settle? What KPIs are you focused on in analyzing your practice?
Yeah, matter length to an extent. So I'm very efficient with what I do. And one of the goals as a plaintiff attorney is you want to move the case along as quickly as possible, and the defense wants to slow it down as much as possible. And what I don't think attorneys do enough is basic things like just communicate with the other side. Because what happens is an attorney makes a demand in a case. Let's say they demand the policy limits of $1 million. And the case in reality is probably worth between $100,000 and $200,000. And the adjuster makes an offer, the defense attorney makes an offer of $25,000. Well, the adjuster and the attorney, or the defense attorney and the plaintiff's attorney, typically don't communicate about offers or resolution again all the way till mediation. And so they enter mediation and they're very far apart. What I like to do is, leading up to mediation, or even in the beginning, is slowly come down from that number. Hey, look, we just want to get the case moving. We offer $950. They then come back and they offer $40, whatever it is. I do that and I move back and forth throughout the pendency of the case, which a lot of attorneys don't do, which, number one, helps me resolve even prior to mediation, or two, if we're at mediation, we're at a range where we have a realistic possibility of resolving. Or if we don't resolve then either, we're still at a closer range after mediation, leading up to trial, all the way up to trial. So first and foremost, I move my cases very quickly. But yes, one of the KPIs I look at is how long a case takes to close from either when I open it in pre-suit, and then again, once it's filed in litigation, from the time it's filed into litigation to close. I also look at essentially how many cases I'm signing up per month, because you have the average time of, hey, if I sign these 4 cases up this month, on average, they're going to resolve in 9 months or 12 months and things like that. So I think that's definitely one of the bigger things I look at.
I love the fact that even in an adversarial relationship, your mindset is to collaborate in the best interest of the client to get things moving, because plaintiffs, a lot of times, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. They don't understand the process. They're not serial plaintiffs. And so getting them a solution quicker that is probably where you're going to end up anyway, is better for them. So when you look at your inventory of cases, are you in the position to be able to forecast cash flow and revenue?
So I do forecast, and I do estimate approximately, hey, what the case is worth and when it's going to resolve. I typically, for the most part, try to underestimate what the case is worth to an extent, and I also like to sort of overestimate how long it's or yeah, overestimate how long it's going to take. So if I think something's going to take 9 months, I really project it at 12 months. Hey, this is going to resolve in a year. So it always gives me sort of that cushion. And I know in my head, like what I truly think it'll resolve for and when I truly think I'll resolve it. But to always sort of leave myself a cushion and leave myself that little extra bit, I do it that way.
That tells me at somewhere in your University of Florida career, you took an accounting class, because that's the principle of conservatism. You don't want
Yes,
to
I did take it.
over forecast.
No, no. And yeah, and I did take accounting, but no, because also even from a personal perspective, if you think a case is going to resolve in 9 months, you kind of in your overall cash flow in your business, you kind of count on that in a way, and then when it doesn't, it's like a little bit of a shock to you and a shock to your numbers, and you're like, oh shoot, I was supposed to have this month, and now I don't. So. And I don't want to be confused with like, hey, I'm not setting my goals of resolving this ambitious enough. No, 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 no. I'm just leaving myself that safety cushion to better evaluate my numbers and project out over the future.
Oh, shoot is what you say on the air. Oh, the other word is what you say in your head. Like,
Right.
oh, shoot, the cash flow's not there. Hey, let's change
Exactly.
gears a little bit and talk about artificial intelligence, which is all the
Yeah.
rage right now. And as longtime listeners know, I'm a big proponent of AI in an ethical use manner. So how, if at all, is your firm using AI? And give me a good use case for AI for other PI firms.
Sure. So I use a number of different AI programs, and I'm actually trying out a few more now. One of the biggest things, and I think it's helpful to any firm, is to have some sort of AI that can summarize medical records in volume, especially for the purposes of a demand. So I was using for a while a program called Rapid Case, where I basically would be able to, and it was all HIPAA compliant, and I'd be basically able to put in 400 pages of medical records, and it would give me a summary of each visit on each date, from every single one. I would then be able to review that summary. It would take me 10 or 15 minutes, and then that's the whole heart of my demand. And that is a good just summary of my client's treatment so that I can reference it anytime. I can reference dates. I can go back to it. I can review it, anything of that nature. So for plaintiffs, personal injury attorneys, I think that's one thing that's super important, is to have a program that can summarize your medical records, because before AI, I would literally go through essentially like each record one by one, take notes and go through it. And don't get me wrong, it was a great way to learn the case. And obviously, I then knew the medicine and the medicals very well. I get essentially that same advantage of knowing the medicals well, of having a program summarize a 10-page record and putting it in one paragraph for me. So rather than taking 10 minutes to read one record, it takes me 30 seconds. And sometimes the cases are very, very voluminous with how many records there are. And so I think that's one super important thing. And then secondly, and it's very basic, I run a ton of my issues and thoughts and processes via just Claude or ChatGPT or whatever you want to use. And I'll say, hey, here's the facts of the case. Here's what I think. Here's what I'm arguing. Here's what the defense is arguing. What am I missing here? What am I not seeing? What's a strength that they have that I think is a weakness? What's a weakness I have that I think is a strength? And it's like a second, very, very, very intelligent person being able to bounce ideas off of instantly. So I think those two things are really important, especially to a trial attorney who's thinking about strategy, who's thinking about how they want to present their case. Someone like me who's a solo practitioner who doesn't have a ton of people to bounce these ideas off of. I think those are two of the bigger things to have as a plaintiff's personal injury attorney.
I love those use cases, and especially the first one, because you are then able to spend your time on higher value matters, analyzing that information rather than organizing that information.
Right.
Just it's just more efficient for the client and for you. So if we think about, you're in a mastermind group now and you're the guest speaker and you're talking to other people who are just starting out in their creating a PI firm, give me one piece of advice that you would give them to build a successful litigation practice.
Go out to as many networking events and meet and discuss and have lunches with as many people as possible, because you never know where that relationship is going to lead to. You never know who you're going to meet at an event or something like that. I can't tell you how many cases I've been referred just from going to events and meeting someone and talking to them about an issue or a case they may have. And they say, I've been really looking to bring someone else on this. Would you be interested? That kind of thing. Every once in a while, I'll have a lunch with a medical provider or something like that. They'll get a call from their office, and a client will need representation, and they'll say, hey, here's this attorney's information. Here's all his qualifications. Why don't you reach out and chat with him and see if you want him to represent you? And then I'll have that person ends up calling me. We have a great conversation. They end up signing up. Just about a year ago, I met a woman who opened up her own personal injury firm, but had very little litigation experience. And so she ended up bringing me on to co-counsel with her on several very, very big cases. And we worked together on those. Sometimes older attorneys don't want to do litigation anymore, or they don't want to handle small or medium-sized cases. They'll refer those out to me once they learn I'm a litigator, especially being board certified, which is a very big big accomplishment on the civil side. So it's really just these meetings of people and getting in the community, getting your face out there, getting your brand out there.
That's fantastic. Hey, I want to turn our attention before we wrap up today to the fact that you played football at Dartmouth and then briefly at University of Florida. So take me through the recruiting process and then going to Dartmouth and then to Florida, where you played for Urban Meyer for this much time.
Yeah. So my senior year, I got recruited from several schools. I would say the heaviest recruiting I got was from Army, Villanova, Columbia, and Dartmouth. But Dartmouth was the first school to make me an official offer. Coach Stevens came to my high school, Suncoast High School, met with me, hyped me up, wanted to get me in for an official visit. So I ended up going up to Hanover, New Hampshire, had an official visit, loved it there. Small funny side story is they're called the Big Green, the Dartmouth Big Green, and green is my favorite color. And as a 6-year-old, I famously always told my mom that I was going to go to a green school and work a green job and marry a green girl. So I hit 1 out of the 3. So I went to Dartmouth, and no, she's not quite green. So just the school for a brief time. But I went up to Dartmouth, obviously in excellent school. The football program was a little different than I expected. I was a fullback. I thought the fullback was going to be a little more involved in the offense in terms of passing and receiving. It was a lot of downhill blocking. I didn't love that. And I wasn't crazy about the North, and my heart and my head said to come back to Florida and to come to the University of Florida. So I transferred to the University of Florida. I essentially walked on to the team, and within a couple of days of being notified that I was going to be on the team, I tore my ACL. And so I thought that was a sign of, hey, just enjoy your college experience. CTE's on the rise. You need your head. You need your brain. You're short and you're slow. You're not going to the NFL. Enjoy your time. And I think it was sort of like a blessing in disguise, though it was the Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow years during which they won 2 national championships. So that would have been exciting, but life turned out okay. So no regrets about that.
I think it did turn out okay, and it getting a finance degree has probably helped you immensely. Did you have any?
And John,
yeah.
One thing I was going to say is it helps me relate to my clients because I went through knee surgery. I went through a major rehabilitation process. I've actually had 3 knee surgeries on that same knee, but I know what my clients go through when they talk about injections, when they talk about going under anesthesia, when they go through surgery and the grueling rehab process for various injuries. So it really helps me connect with my clients because I can say, hey, look, I've gone through surgery too. I've had these injections too. I know how it is. It's awful.
What a great point. But I do want to know, did you have any interaction with Urban Meyer at all? I know football teams are
No,
ginormous in D1 school.
no interact. I basically just got a phone call after the tryout that I was going to be on the team, and that was it. So no interact. The closest interaction I had is in before the spring game my senior year. They had this what's called the fastest gator competition, and I won for the students over 200 pounds. So I actually got to race Aaron Hernandez on the field, and after Aaron Hernandez pretty well beat me. He got a big hug from Urban Meyer. So that was the closest I got to Urban Meyer during my time.
We called that in high school the Fat Man 100. So if you're on the track team and over 200 pounds, you got to run in the Fat Man 100.
Yep, that's what
Aaron,
it was.
Thank you for joining us today. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you or your firm?
John, they can call me directly at 786-953-1499. Text, call. Aaron Feuer Law is open 24/7. And when you call that number, you're going to speak to me. You're not going to be speaking to an assistant. So you have direct access to me.
I love that personal touch. Aaron, thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for listening to Judicial Dollars and Cents, where the business of law meets the practice of law. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Our mission is simple: to help law firm owners build stronger businesses, deliver exceptional client experiences, and create firms that thrive for generations. Again, I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and we'll see you next time on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.